What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be working on my Glock 45 MOS that I sent off to Rocket City Stippling to have it stippled and cerakoted. This one has the Timney trigger in it, and we're going to see if we can do some upgrades to that to make it even better than it already is. I got a Johnny Glocks Timney enhanced Vex trigger shoe upgrade. Supposedly this makes quite a bit of difference. So we're going to throw that in, as well as some routine maintenance that I've needed to do since I got this back. So let's jump into it. I've had this gun back from him. I had it done and got it back probably 6 months ago, and I haven't done anything to it. I haven't cleaned it. I haven't oiled it, nothing. I've just ran it, had it up at our property on my hip multiple times this year. So it's pretty dirty. It's been shot quite a bit. Haven't even cleaned it. So we're gonna go through, do some routine maintenance, clean some stuff up, and then throw in that new trigger shoe and connector from Johnny Glocks. Full disclosure, I did reach out to Johnny asking about the trigger upgrade, and he didn't send it to me for free. So this is going to be my own humble opinion on if it makes a difference or not, if it's worth the money. I paid my own money for it. He did discount it a little bit, but I did pay for it. So we're going to see how easy that is to install and see if it makes a difference. It's been a minute since I posted. YouTube gave me a channel strike, so I was kind of in timeout for a little bit, couldn't post. They took down one of my videos installing a trigger, and I figured, hell, now I can post. What better way to start it back up than a trigger video? So we're going to throw that thing in and take a look at it. Also, make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're hitting that thumbs up button. It really helps the channel out. I know a lot of you guys watch the videos and aren't subscribed. Hit that subscribe button. And if you haven't seen the other videos I've done on this gun, I'll link them down below so you guys can go check those out. So let's jump over to the bench. We'll get started on throwing that in and cleaning some things up. First things first, we're going to make sure this thing is unloaded, no magazine, nothing in the chamber. Now, if you guys have looked into these Timney triggers or shot with one, you know they're probably one of the best Glock triggers there is. Right out of the box, throw it in. One of the best there is. Smooth take up, nice positive reset. They changed the whole dynamic of the gun. I've had this thing in here since I got it. That was one of the first things I put in it. And then I saw that Johnny Glocks has this enhanced kind of trigger shoe upgrade, so I bought one of those. I also buy his connector, which is all polished up nice. And then here's a look at that new trigger shoe. So we're gonna throw those on. But like I said in the intro, I haven't done anything to this gun. I haven't cleaned it or nothing since I got it back from Rocket City Stippling. So we're going to break this thing down and do some cleaning. Also, I'm going to polish up this trigger bar and then pull this safety plunger out, polish it up. Now, like I said, YouTube threw me a channel strike because they said I broke the rules, which I didn't. On their list of things, they say you can't instruct people how to install or manufacture. Triggers is not one of them. If it was a Gatling trigger, since a lot of people have those, you could not show them how to do that one. But a regular trigger doesn't say anything about it. So unless they got some secret list somewhere that says all this stuff you can't show that nobody knows about other than them, something's up. There's thousands of videos on how to install a trigger on YouTube, but mine gets taken down. Anyway, so I'm going to pull this thing apart. I won't show you guys all the ins and outs and the details of that part of it. Before I do that, I'm going to put this back on here and we're going to do a trigger pull test and see what it's pulling at right now with the Timney, and then we'll do it after and see if there's a difference. So I have this Lyman trigger pull gauge that we're going to be using. We'll do 3 of them and take an average. .45. 3.30. 3.45, so that averages a 3.4 pound trigger pull. So I'm going to pull this apart, show you what the Timney trigger entails, get it polished up, then we'll throw the Johnny Glocks on there. Now here's how the Timney's set up. It operates totally different than a Glock factory trigger. Still has the connector, but you install this, I'm not even sure what you'd call it. It's a spring-loaded little doohickey that sits in there that trigger bar rides on. And once it hits that connector, it drops down. And then it has this little spring that goes right here on the trigger shoe that is the return spring. So here's the difference in the factory in the Timney trigger and that Johnny Glocks trigger. The profile is about the same. It just has a little more smoothed over edges instead of the sharper edges. It has a little bit of knurling on the front face of the trigger shoe and that little safety. To install this, you just drive out that pin on the Timney trigger and replace it with the Johnny Glocks trigger, which has a set screw that you just screw back in. And then also the Johnny Glocks trigger has a little channel right here where the Timney doesn't, for this return spring to sit in so it doesn't flex sideways and doesn't get out of alignment or anything. It's right in the same spot. When you're wrestling things around, putting it back together, this thing can get cocked off to the side a little bit and change the characteristics of that return on the trigger. This is the factory connector that came in my Glock 45, and this is the Johnny Glocks, but it's got a slightly steeper angle to let that trigger bar drop quicker. I'm going to take this trigger bar and polish it up to a nice shine. The whole thing where it rides on that safety plunger, back here where it hits the connector and the frame, and then this top cross piece that rides right in here. Now one thing I did notice when I was pulling the trigger on this thing, and you can only really notice it dry firing it, not necessarily when you're out shooting, but when this thing's in the frame of the gun, the end of this, that kind of comes out this side, I noticed it was kind of dragging on this little piece of plastic that sticks up, and also that trigger bar was rubbing right here on the side. I don't know if you can see the little marks in there or not. It rubs right there and right there. You can see where the cerakote's kind of rubbed off, and that's one thing with cerakoting a gun, it changes the thickness. So I'm going to buff these up a little bit, get rid of that overspray Cerakote that's in there, and hit this with a file so everything's running nice and smooth, and just clean everything up. Now all I use to do this is a Dremel. I have a Dremel with like a felt wheel, and then I've also got some of this chrome polish, Simichrome polish, and I'm not even sure where I got this. I've had it for a while. So I just take some of this, throw some on the spots I want to polish up, and then reapply as needed. And it's not really a hard process. You just polish it up till it looks like a mirror. So there's that. Polish it up. Yeah, it's not 100% perfect, and it doesn't have to be. Just make sure you hit the surfaces that will reduce the friction. The top of that crown up there for the safety, right here against the frame, and then this connector part and that top edge is the most important. Really anywhere that touches or rubs on anything, that will just lower the amount of friction that's in there and smooth it up. I'm going to pull the safety plunger out of the frame, polish it up, and make sure it's nice and clean. So when all this goes back together, it rides perfect. So here's that safety plunger. I just pulled it out. We'll just wipe it off, get some polish on it, and polish it up just like we did the other parts. That's that, polished up pretty good. Now I'm going to do some other cleaning on this gun before I put everything back together. So for cleaning my guns, I've bought tons of stuff over the years, and I found these little things on Amazon. They're similar to a Q-tip, but they don't have all that cotton on the end. It's kind of a I don't know, really tight felt so it doesn't get fuzzies everywhere. And these are really good for like cleaning in your rails and any tight places where you would normally use like a Q-tip or something. These are really good. They're disposable, they're cheap. I think I bought these on Amazon. I don't remember exactly how much I paid for them, but I love these things. They make life so much easier when you don't have to pick all the little fuzzies off when you use a Q-tip, because I know all of us have done that. But I just like to get the excess dirt off with that in the tight places, get everything wiped down all nice, and then I have a bore snake that I'll use for the barrel. Just spray some solvent on it, run that through the barrel a few times, and then I've got one of these bristle brushes, just like harder plastic bristles that you can scrub your barrel with, and the breech face, make sure everything's clean that way. So I'll just take my towel, lay it out. I'm using the shooter lube stuff just because I don't know that it's any better than anything else. It doesn't stink or anything, but it has that easiest spray nozzle on there. So just spray that in there and let it get soaking. And anywhere else there's going to be carbon and stuff, I'll spray that on those places. Take my scrubber brush, maybe I'll spray a little more on that. And then I can scrub all those places where stuff builds up, get it kind of loosened up. Now when I do this, typically I put it up through like this and scrub down, because if I just go back and forth, it flips stuff all over the red dot. I don't know that it would hurt the red dot, but doing it this way, it kind of minimizes that. Then I'll just take my rag and wipe everything down afterwards. Make sure to get all that solvent and everything off. If you guys haven't used these bore snakes, you should, because they make life a lot easier. They've got little wire bristles sewn in or built in. Throw a little solvent on there, plus the solvent that's in your barrel. And then it's got kind of a weighted brass tip to it. You just drop down through and then pull this thing through. It has solvent, the brushes, and then the tail end of this snake kind of wipes it out like a patch would. So I just run this through a few times. You know, then you can take these little things too and just get down in the cracks where you can't really get with a rag or anything. Make sure everything's clean down on that little emitter in the red dot. Any dust and dirt that collects up in there. And that's one thing I never thought of when I went to send this gun off, to have the slide cut, have it stippled, all that stuff. I didn't think about how much dirt and dust and stuff will collect in all these little crevices and all the areas where he stippled, like cleaning this. That's a pain in the ass. Normal methods. I took this thing, that's one of the reasons I took it all apart. Took everything out, took it all apart, and it's just a piece of plastic now. I took it up to the sink and used soap and water, ran the whole thing under soap and water, because it would take forever to clean out every single one of those little stippled areas in there to get that clean. Also, if you carry your gun, yeah, if this was a safe queen, I wouldn't really have to worry about it, but I carry this all the time at the property. I have it on my hip 24/7 while I'm out doing stuff, and it gets dust and dirt, and the barrel gets so dirty from, you know, the dust and dirt in the air. I never thought about that either, how dirty it would get just using it like I normally do. So I'll throw this slide back together real quick, and then we'll throw that Johnny Glock's trigger on there and get it put back together and see how that works out. Now for the part you guys have been waiting for. Now that we got this polished up, we'll just take a little punch and drive out this little pin just far enough so that trigger bar will come out. Then we can set that trigger shoe aside. Now the Johnny Glock's trigger shoe, I'll set these side by side. Like I said, it's about the same shape, a little more rounded, and then it's got some knurling on the front. And to put this one on, it's just got a little Allen screw to where you put the trigger bar in, get it lined up with that Allen screw, and slowly screw it in. So he sends you the Allen screw with it. We are going to put a little bit of Loctite on this little screw just so it doesn't back out on us during normal use. And I'll put that trigger bar down in there and slowly start to tighten this down in there. I don't want to pinch on the side of that trigger bar if it's not lined up perfect. So I'll just run it in till I feel a little resistance. Make sure it went through that hole in the trigger bar, and then I'll snug it down. Then I'll wipe off any excess Loctite that got on the outside of that. For you YouTube umpires from YouTube that are watching, this isn't changing the rate of fire or anything. I just swapped this trigger shoe for that trigger shoe. For the over travel adjustment, it comes, I don't know if you can see that, with a small teeny little Allen screw that goes right here in the back side of this trigger shoe. I'm going to put it on this little Allen wrench, get it started in here. And he suggests putting Loctite on this as well. So I'll just put a little dab of Loctite on there, and to start with, we'll just run this in till it's flush, and then we can adjust it from there if we want less over travel. The more you screw it in, the less over travel you have, but you don't want it in so far that the trigger won't break. I'll wipe off this Loctite, and then I'll get it thrown back in the gun and see how that functions. Like I said before, this little return spring has a little groove to sit down in now, which makes it nice so that won't be flopping all over. And one thing I do like to use when I put these back together, they suggest oil, but I like some of this gun grease, and I'll just put it right here on the top ridge, and right there where that trigger bar hits the connector. I kind of like that gun grease. It kind of stays put a little better than oil. Then I'll use oil right there on the top side where that rubs. Got her all back together, so we'll do another trigger pull test and see if it's changed at all. Four pounds, 15 ounces. 3 pounds, 14 ounces. Five pounds, 4 ounces, that's all over the place. Average 4 pounds, 10 ounces. And that's with the Johnny Glocks connector. So I'm gonna swap it back, put the factory connector in, and see if that changes anything, just swapping out that trigger shoe. Okay, we're back to the factory connector. We'll do a trigger pull test on this. Remember, we were at 4 pounds, 10 ounces with the Johnny Glocks connector. 287. 262. 213. So that averages 2 pounds 9 ounces with that factory connector, which is quite a difference. Now here's the new take up, which is drastically reduced. The brake, reset, still has a positive reset. The over travel is pretty much gone. And that take up is drastically reduced, like cut in half at least. So I think for now I'm gonna leave that factory connector in there. So let's jump back up off the bench and go over a few things. So that's that. Got her all cleaned up and that new Johnny Glocks trigger shoe installed. I would say it changes the feel of that trigger a bit. I'm not sure how much was polishing, how much was the trigger shoe, but as far as I can tell, that trigger shoe, one, feels better on the finger. It's not kind of sharp on the edges. Not necessarily sharp, but a little more pointed on the edges, like the Timney one was. So it feels better. There's a little bit of grip on it, so that kind of just grabs your finger and holds it right in place. Let's take a look at the take up. The brake, reset, and brake again. So it shortens the trigger pull and the over travel. With the Johnny Glocks connector, it's obviously stiffer than with this factory one. But this factory one almost feels like you feel the wall, but it doesn't, it's not like you're hitting a wall. It's like you feel it there and it kind of can creep through. I don't know how to describe that. It doesn't feel like as solid of a wall as with his connector versus the factory one. I wasn't doing this for the weight reduction or anything like that. Is it worth $100? Is this a $100 upgrade? Does it make that big of a difference? Probably not, in my opinion. I'm not saying that to bash his product or anything. So in the end, does this make a big enough difference in the way that the Timney functions to justify spending $100 on it? I do like it. I've never had any other Johnny Glock products. I've never put one of his triggers in my Glocks. I've heard everybody rave about them and how exceptional they are. At the end of the day, there's only so much you can do to a Glock trigger, and I think Timney changed the game with their trigger design. That was totally outside of the box thinking. Nobody had done it before. It's not changing a connector or trigger shoe or anything like that. It was a totally new setup other than still using the connector. But this Johnny Glocks one, it is very nice. I do like how it feels. I'll have to get it to the range and get a rock solid opinion on it, because as we all know, dry firing this versus shooting it in real life is a little bit different. So I'm going to get it to the range for my own opinion as far as characteristics of it while shooting it in the real world, how it feels, and if I have any complaints or pros or cons or however you want to put it. But if you haven't, go check out Johnny Glock stuff. Like I said, everybody raves about them, and this is my first experience with them. But thank you to him for giving me a discount on this. I appreciate the support. If you guys like content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that thumbs up button, and we'll check you guys on the next one.